Welcome to A Taste of AZ podcast. Before we get into today's episode, we want to announce that A Taste of AZ magazine will be switching to a paid subscription starting on January 1st, 2024. Until then, you can visit us at atasteofaz.com/subscribe and name your price for the entire 2024 magazine year. You'll get 4 issues for whatever price you decide, and they will each arrive at the beginning of the quarter. With that said, don't forget to subscribe to our email newsletter, and let's jump into today's episode.
All right, we are here at on 19th Avenue. So I live off of 19th Avenue too, but like way north. Like I was like, oh, it's on 19th Avenue. It's got to be close to me, right?
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a, of a drive.
We're down in the hood over here.
This is, to me, I see, I used to work at University of Phoenix on like, what was it, Broadway and University or something.
The big building over there off the I-10? Okay,
yep. So on my lunch break, I needed to get out of the office. So I'd come drive on like kind of over in this area, right? Like you kind of drive down. And that's like this is like the blue collar part of Phoenix.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of like industry here and just,
lots of warehouses and.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting to see.
Yeah.
I dig it. So Dwayne, thanks for having me in, man.
Hey, Eric, thanks for coming by, man, and chatting with us about what goes on here.
I'm very honored to be doing the podcast here at the Marble Machine.
Yeah, we call it the Drink Lab.
The Drink Lab?
Yeah.
Well,
that's what we do.
So this is the Drink Lab here.
This is it.
What is this? This is you were saying you're still coming up with a name for this.
Yeah,
right?
we're still. I mean, it's just a bus. It's the half a bus, really.
Yeah.
And this thing was really quite fun to build. I went down to the junkyard. There's a Volkswagen junkyard down on Broadway, and so I took a Sawzall and an angle grinder and literally just cut this out. I mean, it was bittersweet because I'm a Volkswagen enthusiast.
Okay.
And so the fact that this bus would never see the road again in its original form, that was a little hard.
Yeah.
That was a little tug at the heartstring.
Sure.
But I don't know for a fact that it would have ever seen the road. Yeah. But at least in this form, it gets out there.
Dude, what a way to go, though, right? This is like the samurai death for oh yeah, you got the. That's right.
That happens too,
Yeah, and you got the lights too.
Yeah, lights, headlights, and the turn signals. Yeah,
dude, this is cool. And so you and I first met. We'll get into the story a few years ago through the amazing Jack Maxwell.
That's right.
But then I hadn't seen you for a while, and then I saw you a month or so ago at the Good Food Expo.
That's right.
Local first, awesome people, and this stood out. Like this as a vendor, people have their really cool table set up, and they've got maybe a cool table cover, maybe a cool backdrop.
Right.
Most people don't have a bus that honks at them.
No. It's really quite the crowd pleaser, and then the fun thing is like we will honk the horn periodically, a few times because we don't want to be annoying.
Sure.
But it gets people to look right away because sometimes it'll scare people. Like we'll get a bunch of a group of folks standing around here tasting Big Marble, and you go beep beep, and you watch people jump. It's a lot of fun. So, yeah.
But you're right though. It's a perfect balance, right? You don't want to overdo it,
right?
But you don't want to not do it.
No, you can't. I mean, this is the original horn that was on the bus when we cut it off. So luckily, it's still work. All we had to do was just throw a battery on there to give it some power. So
dude, this is cool, man. So a little, I guess, shameless promotion here, but we just talked, and you're going to join us at the Taste of AZ Food Drink Festival.
Yes.
And you're going to bring this.
That's right.
There. That's gonna,
plus the delicious, Big Marble lineup.
Yeah. Man, this is impressive. We talked about, I help Cano Canning, the beer canning line, and you have an interest in the packaging, obviously.
Sure.
And so I came into the Drink Lab. I noticed the canning or the bottling line.
Yeah.
I'm like, Dwayne's doing it, man.
We've got some capacity for sure. Yeah, we can crank out, some bottles.
Yeah. Well, so let's back up. Like, so where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Jamaica, so I moved to Phoenix when I was 16 years old. So at the end of my 10th grade in Jamaica.
Gotcha.
So that summer, the summer between 10th and 11th grade, I moved to Phoenix, and I've been here off and on ever since.
What was it like growing up in Jamaica? What was Dwayne the kid like?
I've relative to what we're doing here, I was always a tinkerer. I come from a really modest background, and cash was tight, so we didn't grow up with toys. In the same way, like folks in this society grew up with a lot of toys, and so being creative was a huge part of my childhood. We had to like fashion a lot of what we played with, just general items around the yard. Like, for example, we had a helicopter that was a tree.
Okay.
Right. And really, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in the 70s and I was fully in my childhood, early mid 80s. And so Vietnam movies was a big thing back then.
Sure.
And that's something that appealed to me and my siblings a lot. So, so we would soldier about and, jump out of this tree because we're paratroopers and all of that stuff. So, it was a fun childhood, man. Unlimiting in a lot of ways. Growing up on a tropical island, it's the best of all the worlds.
Sure.
If you appreciate nature, you don't have to go too far before you're in dense forests, going up the mountains and such like that. And then we've got the beach there. Although, as kids, we weren't allowed to go to the beach on our own for obvious reasons.
Sure. Okay.
But we did anyway.
Yeah.
That was
because of the ocean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I grew up
the
in
large body of water.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Maybe that's why it wouldn't have lasted very long. I'm like, what is it? Is it obvious? You're like, yeah, dude, if you're by the ocean, like,
So when we skipped school, that's what we did. We skipped school and go to the beach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
As a matter of fact, I got busted one time because when we got back home, if you spend a day at the beach, the salt accumulates.
Sure.
And being dark complected as I am, it was very obvious. And we walked into the front yard, and one of my cousins who didn't go looked at us. You guys went to the beach, and he said, "Ma, they went to the beach." And so my cousin comes over and he sort of just does this like behind my ear.
Yeah.
And licks it. Yep. They went to the beach because we were covered in the salt residue from the beach. We didn't have the wherewithal to wash up and ready ourselves as we head back home. And so we got busted that way, man. But it was a fun childhood.
Was food a part of like growing up?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah? Okay.
absolutely. Although I have to admit that when I was a kid, the food that most appealed to me was just the variety of fruits.
Okay.
Again, tropical island.
Yeah.
A whole plethora of fruits year round.
Sure.
You'll think of the big ones that everybody's familiar with on a tropical island. You think mango, you think pineapple and such like that.
Yeah.
But that barely scratches the surface, man.
Okay.
We've got things like star apple, which is like the flesh. The flesh of this thing is like more like a custard. It's not an apple in any way. We've got guineps, which is kind of like a green version of like a lychee, but it's tart and kind of sour and that sort of way. So really, I was about fruits, and you couldn't go more than a few meters without there being a fruit tree, something that you can eat off of. So I grew up eating off of the land in that kind of way.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, going to the beach, the number one way we would feed ourselves when we steal off and go to the beach was sugarcane fields, because you had to walk by the sugarcane fields.
Yeah.
Right? And so you just climb through the fence and freaking just wrestle down.
Yeah.
Because these things grow real tall. I mean, I don't know if most people are aware, but a sugarcane, it's a grass.
Yeah.
It's a really tall grass. So they'll be 10 feet high.
Oh, dang.
And you'd go in the midst and try to, and we're stealing canes, so somebody had to keep a lookout.
Yeah.
But it was the perfect combination, because if you spend a few hours splashing around in the salty Caribbean Sea, a nice, sweet, sugary thing to bite into is the absolute treat, man. So
and you just get the cane and like you like husk it or something, and then.
Well, no, it's quite a chore, because you got it. I mean, it doesn't break easily.
Okay.
And so a lot of times, which as a matter of fact, this is what annoyed the farmers most, is a lot of time you had to like root it out.
Oh.
And sugarcane, you just kind of chop it and it will sprout back the next year if you leave it alone. And so we'd have to like kind of just wrestle it till
You're ruining crops for years for these guys then.
Absolutely, man. Many years of ruining crops, So you'd really have to fight that thing to get it off of there, and then you'd have a stock that would just be just dragging it along with you while you're munching on it, because we didn't have a knife or anything like that.
Sure.
But it was the number one source of food, man, coming back from the beach, and nobody was interested in going to the beach.
Yeah.
It's on the way back.
Okay.
Because as you can imagine, kids going to the beach, you're not going to pack a lunch.
No.
You don't have any money to buy anything at the shops that are there. You know? Yeah. So it was fun in that way.
Do your thing, walk home, steal some sugar cane, and that's really cool. So I grew up in Ohio, and it's kind of you can grow a garden, and we had like a crabapple tree behind our house, but we didn't have shit like that. Like that's incredible, and I would assume like with the environment, like moisture and everything that kind of goes along with that, like you're getting the best of the best,
absolutely,
the ripest, and like the perfect, like so. I think if I probably would eat more fruit these days if that's how I grew up,
Yeah, I get it, and it's just the nature of the the soil, the environment, as you mentioned in Jamaica. You just drop a seed on the ground, man, it's gonna sprout.
Yeah,
it's got the right moisture, the right mix of soil, and all of that. It's gonna grow. So you'll be hard pressed to buy a piece of property in Jamaica that doesn't have a fruit tree or two on it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Phoenix? Like what? So what? You went from Jamaica to Phoenix?
Yeah, that's right. I came straight to Phoenix. So my stepdad was from here.
Okay.
And he and my mom met in New York and fell in love as people do.
Yeah.
And when they decided that they were going to marry and do this thing, the decision was made that they were going to move to Phoenix.
Okay.
Now, I was with my dad's side of family, my grandma and such like that in Jamaica, and I wasn't privy to the discussion. Just one day, I just heard like, all right, yeah, you're going to the U.S. Embassy and going through the process, and you're moving to Phoenix. And I'll admit that I didn't really comprehend what that meant.
Okay, sure.
Because I remember like even the last day of school, I was assuring my friends that I'll be back. Yeah, I'm going to go see what America's about. I'll be back,
Yeah.
And no, here I am, and it's been 31 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I'm still connected though. I'm in Jamaica. It used to be nearly a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Not since COVID.
Okay.
COVID's kind of put a little damper on so many things for so many reasons.
Sure. Absolutely.
But up until that, routinely, and I think I haven't been there this year. I was there early last year.
Okay.
So I'm well connected. I still, my whole other side of half of my family is still there, and that's the roots. So every once in a while, you got to go, you got to go back home and kiss the ring, and
for sure,
sort of just the grounds, and then come back to the first world where it's fast, and everything is just flying by you at 90 miles an hour.
For sure, and it keeps coming, right?
It keeps coming. That's right.
Coming. Yeah. So what an interest! I love that we dug deep into the fruit aspect of Jamaican and like because what an opposite world to come to.
Sure.
Right. Like Jamaica to the desert of Phoenix. Right. Where like you drop a seed anywhere and it's not it's gonna catch on fire or something. Right.
Even when you intend to.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But as I'm going on this journey through because food and beverage is pretty new for me. Like when I started doing podcasting, I didn't come from the industry. So my grandmother had a restaurant growing up. So I always love kind of just the smell of the back of the house, and even like in the back alley where they're dumping grease, and there's just something that just brings me a positive memory for me. But then I wasn't in the industry for years. 2017 started getting back into it, but learning over these years of like how much actually does grow in Arizona, right?
Sure.
Like it's just different, right? It's different,
right.
And obviously there've been people here for forever, and they've been living like they're not getting 2,000 years ago they weren't getting shit shipped in from
right.
HelloFresh and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So when you moved here, what was that? I mean, was there a big culture shock for you? Environment shock? Like what was it like when you got here?
That's a really cool question. It was seriously a culture shock. For example, I mean, we don't even think about Phoenix at large, just in the household.
Okay.
Right. So
sure.
I had siblings who were born here, raised here. Yeah. Right. And so in 1992, I get off of a plane at Sky Harbor, and I get to my parents' house.
Yeah.
And my brother and sister are eating SpaghettiOs.
Yeah.
What the hell is SpaghettiOs? What is this? Wait, I can't eat this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was like the first
Yeah.
And I'm being absolutely honest. Yeah, it was SpaghettiOs.
Yeah.
I was looking at this thing and it didn't make any sense.
Sure.
Because I come from an environment where nearly 100% of the meals were home cooked.
Okay.
And I don't mean pry open a can, dump it out, microwave it, and hand it off. I mean, like a meal. You start with, scallions and onions get chopped, right? Meats are marinated and all of that. So it was a real culture shock for me. Yeah. And then I met tacos.
Okay.
And burritos.
Yeah.
And those were very strange. If you can imagine a world where someone would look at a taco and go, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
Right? And then I've never trusted burritos since, because you don't know you can't tell what's in it.
Sure, you don't.
So I don't eat burritos to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll smash a taco.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I love a good taco. But burritos, no, I don't do it. I can't trust it. I don't know what's going on in there. It's all wrapped. It's a mystery,
Yeah.
So that was my introduction to food as it is in this part of the world.
Yeah, well, it's almost like, as you say that makes sense, because like the key components of that are technically the packaging of the food.
That's right.
That's that's why I love burritos, because I hate getting shit on my hands. Right. So to me, it's easy. It's easy. If I've got a choice between, you can make this sandwich into a wrap, I'm like, wrap it up. Like, I don't want. Give me some rubber gloves too. I'm not a germaphobe, but I just hate getting. I eat wings with like 2 fingers. Like that's but that's interesting. Tacos and burritos, like one of the most defining aspects of it is the packaging of it.
That's right.
Yes. Where Jamaica, everything's just open, colorful.
It's
right?
just
like
food. And we've got. I guess the closest thing that I would say to a taco that would be resident to Jamaican cuisine would be like a roti, if you put stuff on top of it. If you're familiar with what
is that?
A roti is essentially a fried dough, right? And it's pressed really flat, and depending on where regionally, they may have a bunch of toppings on it, and so it would be more like a tostada, if you will. It's not. It's generally not folded, although when you're eating it, you eventually kind of end up like how you end up folding a slice of pizza. But it's not foldable, but you still kind of just sort of fold it in half so you can get at it more efficiently. So but we don't have anything like that in Jamaican cuisine that I could even say, well, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like the food is, you see what it is, and so to get this thing all wrapped up, it was quite a mystery, for sure. Yeah.
So if you had to eat a burrito or SpaghettiOs today, what would you eat?
Depends on who's making the burrito.
All right. If you know what's going into it, sure.
It depends on who's making the burrito. Yeah. No, I'm kidding, man. Absolutely a burrito. Absolutely.
Somewhere out there, someone is making a SpaghettiOs burrito. See that's why you should be apprehensive.
Say it
right?
ain't so. Don't.
There's got to be. I mean, there's everything out there, right?
Yeah. It sounds like the kind of thing Guy Fieri would be into.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, not Jack Maxwell though. Jack
is a respectable fellow. We would expect nothing less.
No. So all right. So you get here. Did you have like you come here at 16? What that's a really interesting age because you're grown up, but you're not. Right.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You have your whole crew is set. I had my whole crew. In Jamaica, people I grew up with that we've known forever. As a kid in the early days, the shifting sands of friendship, right? The guy you were best friends with in grade school turns out by the time you reach high school, you're like, nah, I can't with that guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and so in that way, my crew was set.
Yeah.
Right? We had our routine. We knew, we knew where the girls were, where we would hang out and go prospecting, if you will. and then next thing you know, I'm at Greenway High School, and I'm one of 7 black kids on the campus.
Yeah.
And it was a very large campus. There was, I think my graduating class was like 200 kids.
Yeah.
At the time at Greenway High School. Now in those days, 1992, the city ended at 51st Avenue.
Okay.
It was like all from 51st all the way out. Matter of fact, I want to say probably we started at 43rd Avenue. So 43rd Avenue and Greenway West was all farmland.
Yeah.
Right? And then of course, that meant that, there was a huge population of on campus that were cowboys.
Oh, of
and
course,
I do mean boots, belt, buckle, hat.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, that was also a trip to me.
Sure.
you know?
You've probably seen it on TV, right?
Right. Yeah. But you drove a car here, bro. Why? What's with the Spurs?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, they look cool, man.
Yeah, and that's really what it was. So it was very different in that kind of way, for sure.
So how did you kind of did you have a path as far as where you wanted to go? Because you have a long history of culinary and
sure,
all food and beverage. was that the path you were on, from the beginning?
No,
Okay.
it wasn't, and to this day, I don't even know what path I'm on,
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I follow my intuition,
Yeah.
and the intuition is really based on just fueled by my interest. And
Okay.
I'm naturally curious.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of curious that will grab a screwdriver, open the thing up, see how it works.
Yeah. Not just sitting there thinking about it.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no, and then quite often I can't put it back together, so it never works again.
For sure.
Like that's
You did
that's
your
good.
part though, right?
There you go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a motor in there that turns the gear, and that's how that goes.
That's what I broke. Why it doesn't work now. Okay.
Right.
Now I
Right.
know, yeah.
So there's never been. I don't know that there's ever been a long trajectory or a long arc that defined what I would be doing.
Okay.
That had any sort of continuity to it. You
Gotcha.
know. Right after high school, I joined the Marines. I spent 10 years
Okay.
in the Marines, and most people will trip out at this. I mean, it wasn't for any patriotic reasons.
Okay.
As I mentioned, being a child of the '80s, hugely fascinated with Rambo and
Sure.
and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Commando. And,
Commando's one of the best.
yeah, Hamburger Hill, right? Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
Those were like movies that I really just like would geek out on.
Yeah.
And so I also mentioned, going to the U.S. Embassy in Jamaica and going through the process of immigrating to the U.S. It's the U.S. Marines that provide security for the embassies abroad.
Okay.
You don't know that. You don't have to know that.
Yeah. I'm learning so much.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
great. Yeah.
Which is always a trippy thing to hear when people get so vigorous about the immigration debate. If you're a U.S. citizen and your parents are not from somewhere else, like you are at least 2-3 generations
Yeah.
of being a U.S. citizen, you have no sense of what immigration or what the process, the
Sure.
rigorous process
Yeah.
that people have to go through to come here, just to even get a visitor's visa. It's an absolute shakedown unless you come from billions.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Yeah.
And so I remember being at the embassy, going through the process and seeing this fella dressed in this tan khaki shirt, blue trousers with this fiery red stripe down the side.
Yeah.
And he had all this stuff on his chest, and he's got this hat on, and he just and 15-year-old me, he's like that's got to be the guy in charge.
Yeah. For sure.
And he's
Yeah.
sitting behind this desk in this little glassed enclosure, like their security room or whatever
Yeah.
you'd call it at the time. And dude just looked regal. And I was convinced, like, that's the guy that runs the whole. Never mind the ambassador or any of those
Sure.
people, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be the guy in charge. He's got
Well,
stripes on him, and
When the shit hits the fan, he is the guy in
yeah,
charge, right?
And so fast forward to me being on campus at school one day, and it was career day, and here comes a guy trotting about in the same outfit, looking just as regal,
Yeah.
as the first time I ever laid eyes on it. And I go over. I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And so he goes into, and he's got the posters and everything, and the tanks and the machine guns and all the stuff that they show off, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "You too can be a U.S. Marine."
Yeah.
And I said, "What? What? Me, little kid from Jamaica? No." And he was like, "Yes, you can. Sign here." I was like, "You ain't got to tell me twice, buddy." And next thing you know, August, a few months later, I'm off to boot camp in San Diego, man.
Yeah.
And so that accounts for a huge segment of my early adult years. And
Yeah.
so in 2003, the summer of 2003, while people were at Cancun for spring break, my spring break was in the deserts of Kuwait and Iraq.
Oh, wow.
For that operation over there.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I came back to Phoenix, and I'd recognize that, I wasn't a career Marine.
Yeah.
I didn't have the temperament.
Okay.
The word belligerent came up quite often.
Of you being belligerent?
I mean, quite often it would
I
come
was
up.
going to say, I would say, I think Marines would be belligerent, and you were not belligerent.
Well-
but you're saying the opposite.
Well, let's just say that, I did leave with an honorable discharge.
Okay, okay.
And I was never busted down in rank or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But I damn sure came close, at least a few times.
Yeah.
See, there's a certain level of logic that is always missing from the military.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
show up with, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't go over very well.
yeah.
And I was that guy. Wait a minute. I was that guy,
Yeah.
And so I went to Iraq and came back at the end of 2003 and decided it was time. And my other passion was technology, computers, as a hobby. And so I ended up enrolling in college to cultivate that skill.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so I spent a few years in IT, and I was consulting at the city of Phoenix as a technology manager up until 2005.
Okay.
When I got bored with that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. Like I feel like you've
no,
that.
don't thank me, man. I mean, and I'll tell you, most service guys, if they're honest, they'll tell you, dude, I had a great time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I got to live out my childhood dream. It was no sacrifice whatsoever.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting take.
Running around, you get to fire weapons and blow stuff up. You know,
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
The one part I didn't do was jump out of a helicopter. So
that's the only thing you wanted to do.
I'm left with the memory of jumping out of the Aki tree. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I got. But I'm all right with it now. I've reconciled it.
Yeah.
And so the idea for the restaurant, believe it or not, the Breadfruit and Rum Bar, was really by accident.
Okay.
And almost in a way a dare.
Okay.
So there used to be like the only Jamaican restaurant in Phoenix for a long time was this place called Irie Jamaica down on Broadway.
Okay.
Broadway and about 24th Street.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right? But it was just this little hole in the wall place that, was just I mean, it was an experience to go there.
Okay.
But it was the only game in town. And so either I was going to go to my parents to eat or I was going to cook at home. But if I wanted some rice and peas and jerk chicken and all the delights, this was the place.
Okay.
And so there were a few people in the office. This is when I worked at economic development that were adventurous enough to go down and eat at this place, right?
Okay.
So we would every once in a while would dip out. And one day I was there, and there was no consistency on a plate of on a dish.
Okay.
You'd order the jerk chicken meal, and today it would come and it would have plantains and rice and peas, and the next day it wouldn't have plantains, and plantains are my favorite.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And so I said something jokingly, right, to the young lady working the front register, and the owner, she was in the kitchen just out of sight, but within earshot.
Sure.
And it pissed her off. Because I was like, hey, you charged me for plantains. There's no plantains on the plate. I mean, what, you gonna take something off? I was kidding. I was totally kidding.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go into the only Jamaican game in town and chastise them seriously,
Sure.
right? I was totally kidding. Well, she took offense to it, and she came out, and she said, in patois, I'm sick and tired of the whole of coming here, come tell me where for the one to go open a restaurant. And that translates to, I am tired of you all coming in here telling me how to run my shop.
Yeah.
Why don't you go open your own restaurant? And I
okay.
like to think that was the day that the seed was planted, because I said, well, maybe I will.
Yeah.
And I was totally joking,
Yeah.
Did you ever see that episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm? With the Spite restaurant where they were
I've never seen that show.
You're out of your mind, man.
I just didn't want to admit it. I knew.
Yeah. Well, there was one episode about Larry, the protagonist, opening a coffee shop next to a coffee shop that had offended him. And so he opened the coffee shop out of spite.
Yeah. Okay.
to run the guy out of business. It was literally right next door. And so in a way, Breadfruit was kind of a spite,
sure,
in that kind of way. So we opened in 2008, and like most things I do, I bit off way more than I can chew.
Sure,
because we hired a chef, and as most people who know nothing about the restaurant business and decide to get in the restaurant business, think that you're gonna show up and clear out the till, put a ton of cash in your pocket, and live happily ever after.
Sure.
And within the first 3 weeks, the reality sets in.
Oh,
that the restaurant is the penny business, and the margins of this thing. And then the fellow that I hired as a chef walked out.
Oh man!
3 weeks in.
3 weeks.
Right. I'm looking at checks that he's writing, money that he's spending, and I'm scratching my head, going, "Bro, we can't keep. We're spending more than we're bringing in. I need you to really back a bit." And so I had this guy out in the alley. So we stepped off because there was the rest of the staff there, and like, hey, let me have a chat with you real quick.
Yeah.
Listen, before you buy anything, you mind running it by me just so I know what's going on?
Yeah.
And he just kind of looked at me, and he said nothing. Dude had no response, and he just turned and walked off. And I'm like, oh, where are you going? I'm still talking to you.
Yeah.
And so he walks back in the kitchen through the back door, and I'm behind him, and he stops at the prep station, and he starts packing up his knives, and he just puts his little knife roll together.
Yeah.
And he turns around and he just walks out. And I'm standing there watching this guy. And it's like maybe like 30 minutes before we open for lunch.
Yeah.
And the chef just walks out. And he just walks off and just like disappears down the alley. And I'm like, yo, hey, maybe he's just taking a break.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Just got out.
And on that day, I became a chef.
Dude. Yeah. Out of that. So it was the owner of that other Jamaican restaurant, like coming full circle.
That's right.
Hey, let's take a quick break for a message here.
We want to announce that A Taste of AZ magazine will be switching to a paid subscription starting on January 1st, 2024. Until then, you can visit us at atasteofaz.com/subscribe and name your price for the entire 2024 magazine year. You'll get 4 issues for whatever price you decide, and they will each arrive at the beginning of the quarter.
All right, so the guide, I mean, I like you, but what a move by that guy, right? That's like I don't want to say a boss move because that's a kind of a dick move, but it's like it's in between, right?
Sure,
because I've heard of those situations where it's you guys are yelling at each other, F you, I'm out of here, this and that. But it sounded like he was just found his center.
That's right.
Found his knives.
That's right.
Got the hell out.
Yeah, and I'm just standing behind him like, all right, okay, cool. We got that worked out.
Yeah.
And he, we got it worked out. All right. I'm freaking out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I slapped on, I donned an apron and got on the line and we just sort of slugged through it. I think it took us probably about a month to really kind of sort it out. But luckily, we were only 3 weeks in.
Okay.
Right. So we weren't busy. There was enough room. There's enough space for me to sort of figure it out. And happy to say that 14 years up until COVID, that restaurant lasted.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. It was a good time for sure.
And so were you in the back? Did you end up finding another chef? Were you basically cooking the whole time?
Well, I think I cooked for probably the first maybe 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Actually, the first 2 years, because when we decided we were going to add the rum bar, we ended up taking over the space that was adjacent to us.
Okay.
And it took about a year to decide what we wanted to do, what I wanted to do in that space. And so the idea of a rum-specific concept popped into my mind's eye. And so we developed that. And so at the time when it was time to build that. So if you remember, all the woodwork you saw at the Breadfruit was my handiwork. It took me 3 months to build that bar, and just by myself. 3 months every day, probably 16, 20-hour days. Long days.
Physical labor,
labor. But it's to this day it's the largest art project that I've ever undertaken, and I'm a sucker for woodworking. I love the smell of fresh cut wood, particularly like cedar and birch and those kind of woods.
Yeah. And
so it was just over there day by day, diligently. I had it all spec'd out as the design, and so the professionals would come in and they like the plumbing and the electrical and all of that, but all the fixtures, the fascia. The real design element, that was my work. And so in order for me to step away for those 3 months, my then partner, Danielle, she ponied up. She stepped in as the chef. And she didn't cook before that. But as it turns out, she just had this amazing propensity.
Yeah.
This latent capacity that we didn't know. And so the moment she stepped up to be the chef, we just unlocked this pool of talent that ended up being just really, truly phenomenal and culminated in us getting a James Beard nomination in 2020, right? And so while I was building the bar, she was over running the restaurant, and we never closed, and there's just a wall that separates the two. Yeah. As a matter of fact, there'd be times where she'd come over like, people are trying to eat. Yeah. But I got to cut this piece of wood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So hammering and drilling and sawing and all of that would just reverberate because it was, it's the same building that shares a common ceiling. So there's the trusses run the entire length, and so the sound would just carry over it, and I'm over there, bop, 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 bop. And she'd come over like, whatever you're doing, can you stop? I'm like, I'm never going to get this thing done.
Yeah.
If we stop. But so about 2 years I cooked for her, and then she took over, and then we worked really closely.
Yeah.
We'd go to Jamaica, and we'd eat around the island, and then so we'd come back and get in the kitchen. We'd really just put our heads together to say, okay, this is what the experience is, and I knew it intimately. She did not.
Yeah.
Right, and then just sort of work through how do we express this experience, but in Phoenix.
Sure.
Because we're not trying to convince anybody that they were in Jamaica.
Yeah.
The jerk chicken you have in Jamaica is never going to be what you have in Phoenix. It's going to be different.
Yep.
Right. The air. Right. The moisture content in the air makes a difference.
Sure.
In the experience on the island.
Yeah.
So that's how much I cooked, and then we started working on the beverage program, and I was very committed to that.
Okay. And so, yeah, what was that whole experience? Because I know you got the James Beard nomination. You guys were featured on Booze Traveler? Is that how you and Jack had met?
No, we were never featured on Booze Traveler.
Okay.
I met Jack through a mutual friend of ours.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
My friend Ken Colburn introduced us.
Okay. All right. Well, you should have been on Booze Traveler, right? Come on, Jack. Yeah.
I think he had wrapped up the show by the time we met.
Okay. Yeah. Same.
It was in syndication by then.
I just randomly, because I would see, I was a huge fan of the show, and then I saw that he would post stuff, and he's in Phoenix. So I told my wife just randomly one day, I'm like, one day Jack Maxwell is gonna be sitting at our table.
Nice.
And I reached out to him on Instagram. I was like, hey man, big fan. I'm gonna be at Goldwater Brewing, this day. Would love to meet you. And he's like, I'll see you there.
And he shows up.
He
He is that kind of celebrity, man.
He really is.
He is just a real down-home kind of guy that, no chip on his shoulder. This is a guy that's internationally known, highly recognized any place he goes, and he is just as warm and as gregarious as ever, man. Really, really sweet guy, man. Yeah.
Well, he ends up, we invite him over. Jackie's like, have him over. We can watch. I knew he was a Patriots fan. I was like, come on over. We're going to be watching some games. You want to come over?
Sure.
He shows up. He has like a little Mickey Mouse, like kind of toy set for my two daughters.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, we're sitting there, and he's unwrapping this, helping my girls unwrap this packaging, and he's sitting at our table. I'm like, I told you he was going to be sitting at our table one day. And he's in our lounge chair, and he's got his feet up, his socked feet. It's just, it was surreal. And I'm like,
nice.
And then you kind of you do kind of forget who he is. He's a celebrity, and that's great because he's just a person, and just a great person. Right. But yeah, so he was then going to start. Actually had his own podcast for a while, and then that's when I met you.
That's right.
We came down, and he did an episode with you, and I was just blown away by the place. It was the first place I'd ever seen like a cocktail made with like burning any sort of fire or not a flaming Dr. Pepper, just to clarify everybody, like a smoked cocktail.
Sure,
and it just blew me away.
Nice.
And you guys were awesome, obviously. So, so that whole experience with Breadfruit, that had been just amazing.
Because, it was wonderful.
Because I feel like you guys started before the big boom of like, I guess, local restaurants and the local dining scene.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And thankfully we did, because we would not have been able to afford downtown.
Sure.
Once it started booming, and
that was a prime spot. You got
That's right. Yeah, just this little real estate office on a lazy street, Pierce Street between First and Second.
Yeah.
And I was just driving around one day looking for a place because for some reason, because I'd spent years at City Hall. Was privy to what's to come in downtown, right? But also, I don't know how far back you go paying attention to downtown, but there used to be like the first independent restaurant that I thoroughly enjoyed in downtown was a place called Fate. By a guy named Johnny Chu.
Okay. Fate?
Okay. Yes. And so Fate was the hottest restaurant. And I don't mean like through social exceptions. Sure. I mean temperature hot.
Okay.
Because if my memory serves me right, you could only, I think maybe Johnny had like maybe 4 or 5 tables in there.
Okay.
It was a tiny restaurant. Now, that was a rich experience in and of itself to go into a place that was that intimate. And you could, if Johnny dropped something in the fryer, you'd feel the heat radiating off the fryer.
That's an immersive experience.
And it was... in the space that is now Samara. I think it's called Samara, or it used to be Bliss Bar.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Johnny actually opened up in there.
Gotcha.
And it was just the coolest experience, man. And so that was like the first truly quote unquote urban dining experience that I'd ever had.
Okay.
And so that planted a seed among all the other seeds
Sure.
that
You
ended
have a whole
up.
pocket of seeds at this
Yeah,
point,
that's
right?
right. Yeah, I should be a farmer at this at this stage. But that was really an illustration of what was possible with restaurants.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got around to thinking about opening a restaurant, I had that in my mind's eye, and so I was combing the neighborhood for a space that would deliver a similar kind of experience from
Sure.
the setting.
Okay.
And I was just driving around, like literally just cruise around block to block looking, and there it was, a little for rent sign in there. But funny enough, there was another space before that, a place right down the corner of 12th Street and Washington.
Okay.
And I'm really going to show my cards here. So I found that place first and then went in and talked to the guy, and it was a little small little space because I insisted that it needed to be a small restaurant. I want a big restaurant because what do I know about restaurants?
Sure.
So maybe if I had a little one,
Yeah.
then I could make that work.
It's a good
right?
starter restaurant.
Yeah, like I don't want a big one. I mean, I can't run a big restaurant, but certainly I could do a little one.
Yeah.
Big restaurant, little restaurant, don't matter.
Sure. Yeah.
You're gonna get kicked around either way, right?
Exactly.
Probably even more so with a little restaurant because
Yeah.
you can't do any volume.
Yeah.
So anyway, we found this little place, chatted with the guy, and he was like, "Yeah, you could turn this into a restaurant." And he's like, "But you're gonna need to take plans to the city." I was like, "Plans to the city, huh? Okay, all right, cool." So, being the tech person that I am, I get home, right, and I get the measurements of the place, and I get onto my computer, and I open up, I don't know what graphic design program I have, probably Photoshop 5.5 or something like that, right? And I do this little thing, like, a little box and like a refrigerator and another box, and it said stove on it, right? And then another box, and it said table, and I had it all specced out, and I printed it on like 3 8.5 by 11 that you had to put together. And I showed up at counter 5. I shit you not. True story. And I get my number, and I sit there, and then all these architects and developers with their big stacks of, proper drawings.
Yeah.
Right?
Rolls of them. And
Rolls and rolls of them. And I'm just sitting there waiting my turn. My number gets called, and I sit down, and, I pull out my 3 8.5 by 11, and I show the guy. I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to build this restaurant. Here are my plans." And he was like, what, these are not plans. I'm like, "Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. There's the fridge.
Yeah.
There's a stove." And he's like, no, you need actual architectural drawings. I'm like, "Oh, the guy that owned the place just told me I need to come over here and tell you what my plan was, and I need to show it to you." Well, I'm showing it to you.
Yeah.
And luckily, the guy who's my architect today that works on my project, a guy named Josh Oler of at Arc One, Josh was at the window next to me and overheard this conversation. And so the astute businessman, ambassador for his company that he leans over and he goes, I can help you with that. Yeah. I was like, "Can you?" And so we met in his office, and as it turns out, his office is in the building behind the building that we ended up renting.
Oh,
right.
Gotcha,
So I showed him, and he was like, "Yeah, you can't put a restaurant in that building, ADA and all the other things." I was like, "Yeah, but the guy who owned the building said I could." He was like, "Yeah, no, you can't. You'll
tell
need
you
another."
anything. He'll tell you. Yeah.
So that's when I drove around and found the space that subsequently became Breadfruit, and by then we were in with Josh, a proper architect, and so we were able to do the thing right and get a permit and convert that into a restaurant. But, so see what I mean about biting off more than I can chew? I don't care, man. I'll jump.
I was gonna say, I think that's the key, right? The key is I heard somebody say this years ago, but you jump off a cliff and figure out how to build a plane on the way down.
That's right.
Thing,
I don't recommend it.
No,
but
that's not a figurative.
But that's how I go about it.
Yeah. But it's action, right? It is. As I learn more about self-development and overcoming certain things, whether it's anxiety or depression or whatever things people are dealing with, it always tends to somehow come back to action.
Sure.
Taking some sort of action, right?
Absolutely.
Sitting there, thinking about it, making a plan, right? Like there's got to be action involved. You're right.
You're right.
And you figure it out.
I will sum that up with a mantra that I am often playing in my head: is just move your hands.
I like that.
Just move your hands. And that applies around here. Sometimes I'll come in here and I'll look at my my work board, and there are 1,700 little items.
Yeah.
You know, replace this valve. You know, change this O-ring, and it's just a long list of tiny little things where you check off 2-3 of them, you're not done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would stand and just move your hands.
Yeah.
And I just start by simply moving your hands. I think that's what you're talking about.
For sure. Absolutely. Just do something.
Just move your hands.
Yeah. And it can be overwhelming, right? When you see that big list.
Yeah.
And you know that for every 2 you complete, 4 more are going to be added to it.
That's right.
But
That's
it doesn't matter. If you want to get where you want to go,
Yeah.
move your hands.
Yeah.
I like
Although
that.
I'm never trying to get anywhere, man. It's really
Yeah.
about what can I get done now.
Yeah, well, and I assume that it's the adventure that you're kind of drawn to as well, right? The process, right? Like
The process. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The process is to see how it unfolds. And this place is really, really a testament to that. I show you where it started with the little cooler thing.
yeah, I love that. You should have that in a case at some point. Yeah.
Actually, that's the second prototype.
Okay.
The first prototype was made out of wood, and it's 10 times the size of that. And it'd
yeah.
probably take 2 of us to move it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
You know, and so once that prototype was the original proof of concept, and then I've got a good friend that has a machine shop, and so I spec'd it out. Like now, I have like proper design tools.
Okay. Sure.
I know how to use them. You know,
Yeah.
like we got CAD software that we can use to develop some of these things, and so I did that and took it over to his machine shop, and he was able to produce that second prototype that you see here.
Yeah.
And that is what turned into all of this.
Wow, perfect segue. Perfect
Yeah.
segue, right? So when COVID hit, that's when the Breadfruit kind of got hit hard. Did you
Sure.
guys get hit hard during
Sure.
the shutdown and everything?
Yeah, it was a perfect storm. So this place, we signed the lease for this place in July of 2019.
Okay.
The Big Marble project, this thing, the timestamp on it is 2013.
Okay. Okay.
And that's because the first time I actually tried to ferment some ginger juice. Obviously, it's not beer until it goes through that process.
Yeah.
It was in 2013. I got some yeast from my friend Sam Pillsbury at Pillsbury Wine.
Oh yeah.
And so I called him like, "Hey, I'm trying to do this thing." He was like, "Here's some champagne yeast. Knock yourself out, kid." And
That was a good impression too.
yeah, you know that if you know Sam, you know that's how it goes. And so the yeast activated, and so it was bubbling, and I took a video of it, and and posted it to our Facebook page, and it's sometime in 2013. I could probably still look; it's still up there.
Okay.
Right, and so 2013. Fast forward to summer of 2017 is when that prototype it was built, and we finally bottled it.
Gotcha. Were you using it at the restaurant, at the bar and stuff?
Well, that's the thing is like that was the whole purpose for this endeavor is that I needed a better ginger beer.
Okay.
So the ginger beer we were using at the time is one I grew up with in Jamaica. D&G was the brand.
Okay.
And it's similar style to this, but different.
Gotcha.
And I wouldn't be able to articulate the difference because it's been a long time.
Okay.
But I had a love-hate relationship with that ginger beer when I was a kid
All right.
because of the spice.
Oh, it's got some
And
kick
it would
to it.
get you all up in your sinuses and make me sneeze and all that. But I loved it, but I hated it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'd still drink. Like, you know, it wouldn't be my go-to, but if that's all that was left, I would drink it.
For sure.
Right?
Yep.
And so when we opened the rum bar and we started making Dark and Stormies, naturally that's the ginger beer we used. And we had an importer that we worked with that would bring it into Arizona. It wasn't available through any of the regular channels.
Okay.
But I was such a believer in the experience of that ginger beer being a really true ginger beer experience. And then D&G, the company that produced it, and this is a Jamaican company, they licensed production to this company in Canada to co-pack for them.
Yeah.
And they reformulated it. It wasn't the same experience.
Yeah.
So just overnight, we're like, what is this? Yeah. High fructose corn syrup. You know, a very common trope is the American palate is not one that appreciates spice, which I think luckily more and more we're proving that not to be true.
For sure.
But it used to be like, you know,
yeah.
no, that's too aggressive for
Pepper, but like black pepper's like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm speculating here, but that was on message.
Okay.
The way they changed the ginger beer. So we stopped using it, and primarily because of the high fructose corn syrup. That ran against part of our philosophy about real ingredients, real food at the restaurant. You know, the motto was good food that's good to eat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's so many. That's a double entendre. If you really look closely, you see what we're talking about. And so, the Dark and Stormy was our #1 selling cocktail it was a 2-ingredient cocktail.
Yeah.
Rum, ginger beer. You can imagine on a Friday night, we could just slang those out left, right, and center. 2 ingredients. We ran them on happy hour because it was delicious and nice and rummy, but efficient for us to produce, right?
Sure.
So we didn't have to charge a lot. Like all the other, a mojito that has, that's got to be muddled and the mint and all of that stuff.
Yep.
Obviously, we couldn't crank those out at the same rate.
So you no longer had this key ingredient to this high producing cocktail you had.
That's right.
Right.
That's
High
right.
demand. One that was it was like your cash cow kind
That's
of.
right. Yeah.
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 So what do you do when your favorite?
Well, we went shopping, obviously, try all the other ones that are out there, and we literally every ginger beer that was available, we brought it in, and I was just astonished because I never really drank any of the other ones.
Okay, because you had your go-to. Right?
I already had my go-to.
Yeah.
I had my ginger beer forever, right? And so none of them worked in the same way. The cocktail just was not the same, and so we sadly had to retire that drink. And in the course of that retirement, I thought, well, let's see, because my grandma used to make a little ginger beery thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like what was in the bottle, but she would do a little ginger brew and ferment it and whatnot. But I didn't like that as a kid because after a certain time, it would start to, develop the business.
Yeah.
Right? It get a little boozy, and
Yeah.
it always tasted like spoiled to me.
Okay.
I mean?
Yeah.
A child's palate. What do you
Sure.
expect, right?
Yeah.
So I called her and be like, hey, Ma, how'd you make this? And she was like, well, do this, this, and this. And so we went back, and that's why we started making it at the restaurant. But then we quickly realized that it needed to be force carbonated because yeast fermentation, we weren't set up to control it. And so every time we made it, it was over here, it was over there, it was here. It was carbonated, not really carbonated.
Yeah.
Yeasty, not yeasty. So we just didn't have the wherewithal to make it consistent. And somewhere along the line, I came across forced carbonation. And so went out and bought a keg, a little pony keg, and a little small CO2, like a 5-pounder CO2 tank.
Okay. Yeah.
And mixed up the first batch, and then we couldn't get it out. Because when it's under pressure, once you open that valve, it just foamed out. You ever gone to the tap, like if you didn't tap the beer right, and it's just all foam.
All foam.
The keg's not coming out. The keg's not functioning properly. So that's what we had. So then that was like, well, all right, well, cool. It tasted great.
Sure.
And if we open the actual keg, we could like ladle out, and it was bubbly and it was delicious.
Yeah.
And that's what led me down this road of discovering the term counter pressure bottling. So we started looking at what the beer guys was doing, home brewers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, how do they bottle their beer, right? And that was where the mechanism was revealed of how to get it out of the keg into a bottle. Problem was, it was the pressure. We were at about 35 psi's.
Okay.
That was too much for any of the beer equipment.
Okay. We were talking about that earlier. Like beer equipment is not made for that much carbonation.
Can't manage that kind of pressure.
Yeah.
On average, maybe 1.5 to 2 volumes of CO2. We're talking about upwards of 4 volumes. So twice the carbonation of what beer would. So I bought like a couple, bottling, little tubes that was perfect for your home brew. Couldn't get it to work. But by then I had understood enough to recognize why it wasn't working.
Okay. Sure.
I needed a stronger setup that could hold that pressure.
Yeah.
And that's when, I went into the garage and, a couple pieces of wood and fashioned the thing that I thought would solve that problem. And it worked.
Yeah.
By this time it was end of 2017. It worked so well that we bought a pallet of bottles, had them dropped off at my house because we didn't have anywhere to put a pallet of bottles at the restaurant.
Yeah.
We went and printed some labels, and the plan was we were going to roll it out behind the restaurant.
Yeah.
Well, by then, the syrup was the same.
Okay.
The flavoring was the same, and we would simply just open a bottle of seltzer.
Okay.
So when we served ginger beer at the restaurant, it would be syrup, seltzer, a little stir.
Okay.
And it was the same experience.
Yeah, like as a concentrate, more like of a...
just a syrup concentrate. And that's how we were making the dark and stormies. And so by the time we figured out how to bottle the thing, it didn't make sense to bottle it, only for us to open it and dump it out behind the bar, because it was a lot of work to bottle it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was doing that work. It was far too involved.
Yeah.
You know, too nuanced and technical for me to have the bar staff do it. It wasn't their job description.
Okay.
So this
Yeah.
was something that I was having to make time to do, and so we did it a couple of times, and I was like, you know, it's nearly the same experience as putting the syrup and dumping in some seltzer water in there.
Yeah.
Let's keep doing that. But that we had something that was special, something
Yeah.
that was unique, right? And then I had a couple of my friends in the bar business ask about it. Like, I'd give bottles away, like, hey, try this out. And people like, what? You guys are making this? Dude, this is awesome. Can
Yeah.
I get some? And that was the seed for all of this. And so we thought, I got on YouTube, got on, you know, Google, and just started looking into how these things are made. And I remember one of the first phone calls I made as we had decided, we're going to build a facility, we're going to learn how to bottle, we're going to do this. Yeah, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm like shopping machines now, and I called this company. I was like, we're going to build a soda company. We need some machines.
Yeah.
And the guy on the phone was like, yeah, okay, tell me a little bit about what you're doing. And so I was like, we're a restaurant, and we're just going to start. We're going to make a few things. And he was like, hey, buddy, we sell machines to Coke and Pepsi. Our machines start at 1.5 million. It's like, okay. All right, you have yourself a great day. All right, bye.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Right? And then so that's where we started, and then just kind of backing off from there, going, okay, what's
Yeah.
accessible to us? And that's when I came across, like the monoblocks, the production machines that were not quite Coca-Cola
Yeah.
or Pepsi in scale, but certainly not your hometown brewery either. It was
Sure.
it was that in between.
Yeah.
And we settled on this particular machine, the GAI, because that has a massive fan base around it.
Okay.
So there was a bank of knowledge
Okay.
across a bunch of different blogs and such like that. So I was able to go read about the machine, understand its functionality before I got my hands on one.
Yeah,
And
nice.
that, not just that machine, but a couple other ones. But we settled on the GAI because, again, there was a plethora of information. There was this whole community. Primarily brewers, but when I looked at the specs, it can handle as much as 7 volumes of CO2. So right away, we found our machine.
Yeah,
Because we
yeah.
only needed to be about 4.
Okay.
Right. So clearly this can do, and it was suitable for the beer guys. And again, just to be able to read through the blogs and see, the kind of challenges they were having, troubleshooting and such like that. But the best thing is looking at the schematics and understanding. Yeah, it's pneumatic. That's the majority function of this machine is pneumatic pressures, air, air actuators, a good set of socket wrenches, and a good tool setup. And I'm pretty sure I could overhaul this thing.
Okay.
And so that's
Yeah.
when we decided, all right, let's get the machine.
Yeah.
And then we shopped everything, and that's kind of how this space come together. As a matter of fact, we had a very difficult time getting permits because, again, we're that in-between space that even the city of Phoenix didn't know what to require of us.
Sure. Yeah.
We're not a brewery,
Yeah.
so we're not brewing anything, and we're certainly not Khalil,
Yeah.
bottling for Pepsi.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I had to read up on some of the international development codes and go back to the city to go, here's how I understand the code. Help me help you understand, this is how it reads and this is how it applies to us, because something like this had not been built in the city before.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you're just continually going to those city buildings like, here comes Dwayne again. Now what's he doing? He probably tore apart his bottling machine.
Not knowing what he's doing. Here's that guy again. I mean, what's he up to now? Yeah.
Nah, that's great, man. It was, so things really start taking off for you then, right?
That's
'Cause
right, yeah.
Then I remember, I can't remember a time period, but I just remember just starting to see the big marble because the branding
Yeah.
is so clean, it's so clear,
Thank you.
and there's just so much about it that
Yeah.
draws me in. So things start to get amped up then, right?
Well, no, don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
We got a permit for this place. Our C of O was issued February of 2020.
Okay.
And we got our organic certification that showed up probably the first week of March.
Okay.
And if you think about what's going on, there's rumblings about COVID, yada yada yada, but it was in the distance.
For sure.
Right?
Yep.
This was everybody else was dealing with this. We
We've
didn't
seen
know
this
what was
before.
Yeah,
This happens every year around
it's
flu
the
season.
flu.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, and so right around that time, we got our certificate of occupancy. We had all the raw materials, sugar, bottles, everything. And I distinctly remember having a chat with my partner and saying, let's take another month and do some more testing because production was on my shoulders.
Okay. Yeah.
And I wasn't quite comfortable with all the machinery yet.
Yeah.
And so we had press releases that were teed up to go out to say, hey, this is happening, right? And then middle of March 17th.
Yep.
The whole machine comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
So I like to say that this thing was almost stillborn, man. It almost didn't happen because we were dead in the water.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it was about June of 2020 before we decided, all right, let's go back in there and we've got everything.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can start getting some momentum, and that really meant, the press releases fell on deaf ear because all media was consumed with COVID.
Sure.
So we couldn't get any press, we couldn't get any advertising. The restaurant was closed, and while we were building this thing, the restaurant was very profitable. It was doing great. 2019 was our best year, and so that was gonna be the bread and butter while we developed this thing. And now all of a sudden, the bread and butter is gone.
Yeah.
There's no revenue coming in from the Breadfruit, and we have massive loans that we took out to build this place.
Yeah.
Right. And then on top of that, right around the same time, my partner Danielle and I decided that we wanted to go our separate ways. And so we'd been together almost 15 years.
Yeah.
And she was the other key half of the business.
Okay.
So if you could imagine navigating COVID. Two businesses that are essentially languishing because none of them are up and running.
Yeah.
And then my personal relationship goes to absolute,
Yeah.
whatever. So it was a fun time, my friend. It was a wicked running of the gauntlet, if you will. But, we're both sensible people, so we were able to, work through this, that transition as amicable as possible. And then we decided that it was best for her to step away.
Okay. Yeah.
And at the time, we had already decided that we're just done with the restaurant business because, Big Marble, as a matter of fact, was built in some ways as our exit from the restaurant business.
Okay.
My good friend Aaron Chamberlain told me one time, which is one of the best piece of advice I've ever gotten in the restaurant business. He said, Dwayne, restaurant is a young man's sport.
Sure.
You better know when to get out.
Yeah.
And so that kind of just sitting in my mind's eye. I'd be like, it's time to get out. And so it wasn't until about last year where we really started getting some traction.
Okay. With Big Marble.
With Big Marble,
Okay.
because I think last year was the first full calendar year. 2020, absolute throwaway. 21 was a throwaway year for us anyway. We did next to no business because everybody was still trying to get back to whole in whatever way they needed to.
Sure.
Right. And so 2022 last year we started to see some traction, and that's when we added the other SKUs. We launched our extra dry tonic water, which really, if you're a gin and tonic lover, that's your jam. You want that.
Yeah.
And then this year we launched two new SKUs, the proper hibiscus that you have there.
Yep.
And proper hibiscus we launched in July of this year. The proper lemon we released in March.
Okay. Gotcha.
March, April of this past year. So we're really just now, we've been at this for so long, but, technically I tell people that this company's a year old.
Yeah. Yeah. Decade, right? But, but a year old. Yeah.
But a year old.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that's interesting, right? Because in my mind, and maybe, it's because, I work so closely with the industry. It seems like you've been around forever. Big Marble's. It's like just.
I like that perception. I'm quite pleased that that's people look like. Yes, we've been around. We're like a Schweppes. We've been around since the 1800s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, you're just learning about Big Marble. Shit, where you been?
Where you been? What rock have you been under?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so what's next? Like, what is? Because I know you guys are working on some big things right now. So what's the
So yeah, I'm glad you asked. So in July, we submitted to in March of this year, we submitted our tonic water and our ginger beer to the New Orleans Spirits Competition, and that's put on by the folks at Tales of the Cocktail. So if you're in the cocktail scene, Tales of the Cocktail, that's like the Oscars of the cocktail business, right? And shout out to Kaylee and Jason for bringing home Best Cocktail Bar in the nation. Is right here in Phoenix over at Century Grand, right?
Heck yeah. Yep.
So we submitted to as I said, ginger beer and tonic water in that competition. And in July, we came away with a gold medal for the ginger beer and a silver medal for the tonic water.
Congrats, man.
And so thank you. That immediately put us on the national stage, right? And so we're back here going, all right, we need to move at this as quickly as we can. We fielded phone calls from folks outside of Arizona saying, hey, you guys are doing this thing here. How can we get our hands on it?
Yeah.
We're not outside of Arizona yet, and so we just put together a program working with distributors in Nevada and Southern California. Those are the two markets we're looking at getting into by the end of the year. Of course, this is a very expensive endeavor.
Sure.
Monday morning, yay, we're in Nevada, but we've got payroll on Friday before we sell the first bottle of product, right?
Yeah.
So we launched this crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo.
Okay.
You can find information on it on our website, bigmarble.com, or Big Marble Organics on Instagram. We've got all the info there.
Okay.
But we launched this crowdfunding campaign with the hopes that we can come to the community to say, hey, help us grow, right? Help support this local product that is doing it right, clean, sustainable, organic, fair trade ingredients, and it's just downright delicious.
I would say
right?
delicious. Yeah, for sure. On top of it all.
So what we're hoping to do with this crowdfunding campaign is to bring in some revenue that will help to just sort of stem the bleed, if you will, while we try to stand up in these new markets. And I think that's what's next for us right now is to take the Big Marble story, which is a story of Phoenix, a story of Arizona, to the rest of the country. But it's an expensive endeavor, and so we can't do it alone. And short of burying ourselves up in more debt than we already are, and giving up a pound of flesh to an investor, we thought we would at least try this route to to see how much support we can garner from the community. And so that's the big thing that's next. We're really excited about taking the show on the road, and that's what we're focused on.
And is that live now? The Indiegogo?
It's live now. Okay. We've got about another 28 days to go.
Okay.
The campaign.
October 31st, 30th?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. Okay. You, all that info is on the website.
Yes. All that info is on the website.
It's like the tiers. I saw the different tiers that you could do. And
we've got
personalized.
We've got
product.
some really cool perks. Everything from, like you said, a personalized product. And so what we'll do is you'll see we've got the date code written on these bottles here, so we can retool that so we can write your name on it, which will be absolutely a one of a kind. You won't be able to get this anywhere. I think it'd be a souvenir, and I will encourage folks to hang on to it because maybe someday you can head over to Sotheby's and auction it off and put a nice chunk of chip.
Hell yeah. Some guys.
I don't know. We could dream, right?
Yeah. Dude, I picture one day somebody being on the phone saying, hey, I need to find a little bottling machine. They're like, dude, we sell to Big Marble.
That's right. That's right.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, man.
That's
a $1.5 million
Yeah, our
machine.
machines start at $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Only Big Marble can afford these.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I love it. You're a good dude. I love what you're spreading, and you're just always a great time to be around. And the product is just I'm a fan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, man. Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
Awesome, dude. Well, thanks for making the time. I know you're a busy guy. Got to see the whole setup here, and got to try some product. I think the ginger beer is coursing through my veins right now, and it's feeling good, man. So
it's good for you, man. It helps to promote good gut bacteria and all the wonderful things that ginger do for you. So
love it, man. Love it. Well, Dwayne, thanks, dude.
Eric, thanks for coming down, man. It's a pleasure chatting with you. Anytime.
All right, you too, man.